Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Short. Today I would like to share with you my final project on a career interest in my field of study. The career I have chosen to investigate is wildlife rehabilitation, specializing in American black bears. I have always loved animals and enjoy caring for them. Having spent lots of time in nature, wildlife is particularly interesting to me. There is a need for wildlife rehabilitators, and although this career field may not be financially lucrative, the reward of saving animals could be well worth it. In this presentation, I will discuss what wildlife rehabilitation is, how you become a wildlife rehabilitator, the average annual salary and working conditions, and what it is like to work specifically with black bears. Wildlife rehabilitation is caring for sick, injured, and orphaned native species with the ultimate goal of releasing them back into the wild once they are able to survive on their own. It involves capturing the animal, caring for it, and nursing it back to health, and then releasing healthy animals back into the wild. The first step in working as a wildlife rehabilitator comes with getting a degree. Although it is not necessarily mandatory to work in this field, it is helpful to have knowledge in areas such as biology, ecology, environmental science, zoology, or veterinary medicine, and this will allow you to apply for higher paying positions. My field of study is environmental science with a concentration in fish and wildlife. This will give me a good background to lead into wildlife rehabilitation and will offer relevant classes. Each state is different, but in my home state of Colorado, the next thing you will need to do is find someone to gain experience from and work in the field, usually as a volunteer, for at least 1 year before beginning the licensing process. This flowchart from Colorado Parks and Wildlife shows the steps needed to become licensed. In short, you will need to get experience, find a sponsor, a veterinarian to work with, and have a facility to house the animals. Then you will proceed with the applications to the state. Once your provisional license is approved, you can begin rehabilitating and releasing wildlife under your sponsor's supervision. After having a provisional license for 1 year, you will be able to apply for your actual license. Once that is approved, you will no longer need to work with a sponsor and can sponsor others yourself, as well as accept volunteers and interns. Most people gain general knowledge working with many species, and care for multiple animals is usually required for licensing. Then you may choose to specialize in a particular species, such as my interest, the American black bear. Salary for wildlife rehabilitators can vary greatly, depending on who you work for and at what level. Most rehabilitators work purely for the joy of helping animals, and they receive little to no compensation and rely on donations or other jobs to support themselves. A general position working for an organization can range between $25,000 and $35,000 a year. On the higher end, a management position for an organization can pay an average of $51,000 annually. There is a high demand for wildlife rehabilitators. There are studies showing that as human population increases, so does the number of animals requiring rehabilitation, as demonstrated in this graph. Increase in population increases human and animal interactions. Unfortunately, as demand for rehabilitators increase, there is still little funding for these programs, therefore making it difficult for people to pursue this career path. As for working environment, be prepared to spend most of your day outdoors caring for animals. There are no set hours, and animals have to be cared for around the clock, day and night. You are on call 24/7 in case of an emergency and will be required to work in all weather conditions, rain or shine. This job is time consuming and you must be very dedicated. For instance, infant cubs have to be fed every few hours throughout the day and night. Wildlife rehabilitation can be very rewarding as well as heartbreaking. You get to experience the joy of caring for animals and seeing them returned to their natural habitat, but you also have to endure the pain of seeing animals suffering when hurt, as well as prepare for the fact that not animals will make it. Some injuries may be too severe and the animal might need to be euthanized. Some animals may pass away regardless of efforts made to save them. Most rehabilitation centers follow a similar process when rehabilitating animals. This diagram helps to show this process and the steps taken in each situation. Upon arrival, animals are medically assessed and method of treatment is determined. Then they go through a behavioral assessment, followed by a rehabilitation phase, a pre-release behavioral assessment, pre-release medical assessment, and finally, if all goes well, the animal is returned to the wild. When it comes to rehabilitating bears, there are a few things that you should be aware of. Bears require large enclosures and need to have behavioral and cognitive stimulation. Human interaction needs to be limited to keep bears from habituating to humans. According to master rehabilitator Linda Peck, your major responsibility is to keep them wild. You want them to be independent and not need you. This keeps bears from becoming a nuisance to humans after release. So far, there are no documented incidents of rehabilitated bears attacking a human post-release. Most bears are orphaned due to human interactions, such as hunting, vehicular collision, and nuisance removal. But natural reasons for cubs being orphaned also occur, such as den disruption, weather, and poor food sources. Most orphaned bears are kept throughout their first year of hibernation and are released back into the wild the following spring. It has been shown that there is a higher success rate when orphans are released close to the time of weaning, which would be spring after their first hibernation. Many sanctuaries practice soft release, which is releasing the bear while it is hibernating into man-made dens. The bear then wakes in the spring in the wild. This practice is showing to have increased success rates and not only helps the bears mentally, but also keeps them from wandering long distances and getting into trouble. As you can see, there are many steps involved in becoming a wildlife rehabilitator. You need to get a degree, experience, and licensing. The salary for this career is relatively poor unless you enter into a management position, but can be rewarding in other ways. Rehabilitating bears is a specialty, and many considerations need to be taken when considering working with them. They need large enclosures, varied foods, little human interaction, and care needs to be taken on release to ensure their survival. In the long run, rehabilitators find that it is all worth it. The rehabilitation of bears is essential to preserving DNA diversity and to repopulate areas previously inhabited by bears. Thank you for joining me today and allowing me to share with you my final presentation on a career interest in wildlife rehabilitation, specializing in American black.